Coming up on Locked On Dodgers, would the Dodgers really move Mookie Betts to second base to make room for Aaron Judge? Also, an analysis came out about Cody Bellinger and why he's broken and whether he can be fixed. And we're going to talk about some comments from David Vassegh and Jerry Hairston on Access Sportsnet about why the Dodgers lost the series. So let's get Locked On Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, Dodger fans. This is Locked On Dodgers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. Remember, this show is free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers. Or even better, go ahead and subscribe wherever you're watching or listening right now, and then you will never miss a day because you were not going to. If this is your first time with us, my name is Jeff Snider. My normal co-host is Vince Samperio, but it's just me today. Vince and I are both lifelong Dodger fans, just like you are. We've also both spent time covering the Dodgers in the press box and the locker room. So we're not quite insiders, but we bring you the smart fans perspective on our boys in blue every weekday morning. So again, please subscribe wherever you're watching or listening, and let's talk about the Dodgers. I want to start with a little rumor that came around over the last couple days. I think it was Mark Feinsand on MLB.com who originally floated the rumor that basically that the Dodgers might, he said they might, instead of pursuing Trey Turner in free agency, they might go after Aaron Judge. And he specifically said that might mean Mookie Betts moving to second base to make room for Judge. And so I want to talk about the simple question: would the Dodgers really move Mookie to second to make room for Judge? And I don't know. I know I'm not supposed to give the answer this early in the episode. Just promise me that you'll keep listening for my reasoning. And I've got two good segments after this one too. So listen to the whole episode, please. But I'm going to tell you up front, no, they're not going to move Mookie Betts to second base to make room for Aaron Judge. And there's a few reasons why. First, obviously, Mookie would be willing to. Mookie enjoys playing second base, and he's a team player. If it's what's best for the team, he'd be happy to do it. He would do it. But Aaron Judge is a fine defender, but he is nowhere close to Mookie Betts. If you look at outs above average, Mookie had 5 this year, Judge had 2. That's the closest stat. In defensive runs saved, Judge had 3, Mookie had 15. In UZR per 150, basically ultimate zone rating on a scale of per 150 games, Mookie 15.2, Judge 2.6. That's range. The only thing, Judge had 4.5 runs value on his arm. Mookie's is only 3.8. Judge has a little bit better arm, or at least more valuable arm than Mookie. I think some of that comes from playing in a stadium with a tiny right field, and for some reason people keep running on Judge, and it's easier to throw a guy out from when the right field wall is 105 feet away or whatever it is at Yankee Stadium. So, Judge has a good arm, much, much less range than Mookie Betts. He is, and I know on the internet it's impossible to be in the middle on anything. So I'm going to make it clear. I'm not saying Judge is a bad defender. I'm saying he is not nearly as good a defender as Mookie Betts. That's the bottom line. And the other thing is the Dodgers have other outfield spots available. Now, in the second segment, I'm going to talk about Cody Bellinger. We don't know if center field will be an availability for the Dodgers or not. We don't know what they're going to do with Bellinger. But, Judge has played some center field in the past. Mookie has played some center field in the past. I'd rather have Mookie in center than Judge. But more to the point, they don't really have a lights out left fielder. They have Chris Taylor, who was pretty bad in 2022. They have maybe Trace Thompson. I assume, we don't know if they're bringing Trace back or not. I assume he'll be back. So, they've got people, but they don't have anybody of Aaron Judge's caliber. And Judge hasn't played much left field in his career. But if you can play right field, you can play left field. And, I think Judge would be just fine in left field. So there are ways to make it work in the outfield. If the Dodgers did want to go get Aaron Judge, there's ways to make it work. Now, part of the thinking would be if they got Judge instead of Trey Turner, then you move Gavin Lux back to shortstop, so you're going to need a second baseman anyway. Uh, I don't think it should be Mookie Betts, simply because, you know, I guess one argument in favor of Mookie is they are banning the shift next year, and so athleticism at second base will be at more of a premium once again. The Dodgers have Michael Busch in the minor leagues. Michael Busch can hit, and that I'm hoping he gets a good shot in 2023. And I would be perfectly happy to see him getting a whole lot of at bats at second base. Uh, Defensively, he probably doesn't have the range that Mookie Betts would have, but Gavin Lux has the added advantage of being as athletic as Betts and also used to playing the infield. If you were to put Judge and right, Mookie at second, and Lux at short, that probably makes all three positions at least a little worse than they were in 2022 from a defensive standpoint. And I don't think that's a step you really want to take. Obviously, Aaron Judge strengthens any lineup. And when you're talking about replacing, I guess if he's replacing Trey Turner, it's less of an improvement. Judge definitely had a better year than Trey Turner this last year. Overall, they're not similar players at all, but value wise, they've been somewhat similar throughout their careers. And so it's a weird idea, and it just seems to me I have a hard time picturing the Dodgers going after Judge anyway. Like seriously, I think they will definitely be involved in the bidding, if for no other reason than that the Giants are going to be interested. In fact, there was a report on Tuesday that the Giants are determined to sign Judge no matter what the cost is. The headline said the anonymous source said we won't be underbid on Aaron Judge, which makes me wonder if they know what underbid means. They don't. What they mean was outbid. And I think the reason the person was speaking on the condition of anonymity is because it's a good way to get yourself fired if you are publicly stating our team is going to pay more than anybody. I mean, it basically tells the Dodgers, hey, offer Judge whatever you want, and the Giants will beat the price. So just drive up the price. So I think the Dodgers will be involved, if for no other reason than that the Giants are one of his most likely landing points, and they're going to want to drive that price up. It's hard for me to see Aaron Judge ending up on the Dodgers, partly because they don't really have a need there. Position wise, obviously, if Judge played like he played in the 2022 regular season, he would be a big improvement. But that was a career year for Judge. He's only played 3 full seasons in his 6 seasons in the big leagues. He's had injury issues throughout his career. He's older than Trey Turner. He's old by baseball standards. He's going to be 31 early next year. And so, yeah, I don't know. He just doesn't strike me as the Dodgers type of player. And when you throw in the fact that you would have to consider taking your 6-time Gold Glove award, Mookie's only won 5 Gold Gloves. He's going to win his 6th next month. You're going to consider taking your 6-time Gold Glove winner out of right field, where he's won those 6 Gold Gloves, to make room for a lesser defensive outfielder. It just doesn't make sense. So if they were to get Judge, it wouldn't mean Mookie moving to second base, and I don't think Judge is likely. That's my thoughts on that. We'll probably talk about Judge more this offseason because he's going to be a storyline depending on how long it takes him to sign. He is one of the big stories of the offseason, and the Dodgers are going to continue to be linked to him. So I'm going to come back in a minute. I'm going to talk about this article analysis that came out about Cody Bellinger's swing and some interesting thoughts from that about when his swing got broken and whether or not it can be fixed. So thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning, and please keep it Locked On Dodgers. As everyone knows, athletes rise and fall in the ranks, but when it comes to saving money, Simply Safe always stays on top. And right now you can save big with Simply Safe Home Security. They're giving listeners 40% off their advanced security system. Simply Safe was just named the best home security of 2022 by US News. You'll love it because at Simply Safe, your safety is the only thing that matters. Having your home protected by a security system is an amazing feeling. I was on vacation with my family last year, and I got an alert on my phone that there was motion inside my home. I quickly logged in on my phone and was able to pull up the indoor camera and see, oh, good, it's just the next door neighbor kids coming over to feed our cats like we asked them to. Simply Safe blankets your home in protection with advanced sensors for every room, window, and door. HD security cameras for inside and outside your home. Smarter ways to detect motion that only alert you when a threat is real. And even hazard sensors that instantly detect fires, floods, and other threats to your home. 24/7 professional monitoring costs less than $1 per day. That's less than half the cost of ADT's traditional professional installed plans. So don't miss this chance to save big when you protect your home with the best. Get 40% off your order when you visit simplysafe.com/lockedonmlb today. Customize the perfect system for your home in just a few minutes. That's SimplySafe, SIMPLISAFE.com/lockedonmlb. Go today. There's no safe like SimplySafe. All right, I am back. I want to thank you again for making Locked On Dodgers your first every weekday morning. When you're done with this episode, for your second lesson, check out Locked On Sports Today. From the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports, you'll be on the scoreboard and behind the scenes with the local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today, available on this app, YouTube, and wherever you get podcasts. All right, I am back, and I want to talk about Cody Bellinger. There was an article on Prospects Live the other day, which is an interesting place for this article because they do focus mostly on prospects. But a guy named Tyrion Alexander, he wrote up this analysis looking at Cody Bellinger's swing over the years and trying to figure out why he has gotten so bad. Cody Bellinger won an MVP at age 24. He's only 27 now. He should be in his prime, and yet he has had 3 straight subpar seasons and hasn't come anywhere close to what he was in his MVP season in 2019. So Tyrion Alexander tried to figure it out, and the first step to that was figuring out when it happened. And I think we all kind of assume the problem happened between 2019 and 2020, or maybe even during 2019. Bellinger wasn't as good in the second half of 2019 as he was in the first half. But mostly that was because he was so ridiculously good in the first half. And I think we can throw out the idea because even in the second half of 2019, he was still very good. If he had played that way the whole season, he wouldn't have won the MVP, but he would have still had a very good season. And so 2019 we can throw out the window. But I think a lot of people assume it happened between 2019 and 2020 because he was a lot worse in 2020 than he was in 2019. But Tyrion Alexander notes something interesting. He says, however, Cody Bellinger still had a 374 xwOBA, which is expected weighted on base average. Basically, WOBA is just a stat. How good did you hit? xwOBA is based on the quality of contact you made. How well should you have hit? What was the expected performance based on how well you hit? So he says Bellinger still had a 374 xwOBA that was in the 85th percentile and the second best of his career. This is in 2020. His top end exit velocities were just as high in 2020 compared to 2019, and his contact rate was actually higher. The only thing that regressed was his line drive rate and his plate discipline, both of which fell in the standard range of ebbs and flows over a 60-game stretch. You remember in 2020, Belly started off really slowly, and then his last 2 months month of the season, there was only 2 months of the whole season, but the last month he was much better. And basically, what Tyrion Alexander is saying here, I need to decide whether to call him Tyrion or Alexander or this guy, because I'm not going to say his first and last name. I don't know why I keep doing that. But what he's saying is it was 60 games, and chances are if the game had got a full season had got a full 162, things would have even out, and his 2020 would have been pretty solid. And so when you look at exit velocities and xwOBA and that stuff, yeah, 2020 wasn't actually that much worse than 2019. So then we can look at the shoulder injury. Remember, in Game 7 of the 2020 NLCS, Bellinger hit the big game-winning home run in the 7th inning, I think. He did a big forearm bash with Kike Hernandez, dislocated his shoulder, and it was a big deal. They popped it back in, but he ended up having surgery after that season. And so, and then he was terrible in 2021 and not much better in 2022. But as this guy points out, he says, however, there are a few problems with this explanation. The first and most prominent is that after dislocating his shoulder in 2020, Bellinger had a batted ball with a 111.2 mile per hour exit velocity in the World Series just a few days later. He also hit 107.8 and 107.7 in that same series. All of those batted balls have a launch angle above 0 degrees, so it's unlikely that they are misreads. Yet, playing with a dislocated shoulder, he had 3 batted balls harder than a single one he hit in either 2021 or 2022. That's the big key. In that World Series, with the shoulder still injured, he hit the ball harder 3 times than he did ever in the last 2 seasons, which means The shoulder injury didn't sap his power. Uh, Whatever it was, the shoulder injury, he still had the power even when the shoulder was still injured, let alone after it was surgically repaired. You could maybe make an argument that the surgery sapped his power, that something about being surgically repaired weakened him. But Alexander looks at and sees something a little bit different. He thinks that it was an injury issue, but it wasn't the shoulder injury. He thinks it was the fractured leg that Bellinger suffered early in the 2021 season. And you remember he was running first base against the A's, ran at first base, the pitcher's covering first base, accidentally kicked Belly in the back of his calf, fractured his leg, and Belly missed a lot of time and ended up, had a couple other injuries that year, missed a bunch of time, and had a terrible, terrible season. And what Alexander says is he thinks that that fractured leg was actually the issue because it wasn't broken so bad that Cody couldn't put weight on it. He could still stand on it in a boot. And so he kept hitting. He was trying to keep his swing fresh so that he wouldn't lose time. And Alexander says the risk of Cody Bellinger swinging with the broken leg wasn't that his leg gets more broken. It's that the pain teaches him bad habits. And so basically what this guy concluded was that while Bellinger was hitting with the fractured leg, that his lower body changed habits, and he basically changed his form to account for the broken leg. And he shows a lot of pictures and videos. You should go look at it. Prospectslive.com. And it's an article about Cody Bellinger. I'll try to remember to put a link in the show description. But Bellinger, he shows pictures, and yeah, you can see his weight distribution is different. And I know Jerry Hairston likes to harp on Bellinger just needs to use the stance he used in the 2021 postseason. I don't think it's that simple, because if it was, he would have done that. And this makes a lot more sense simply because it's more complex. And Alexander concludes, he says, his broken state doesn't have to be permanent, however. The upside that saw Bellinger win an MVP still exists within him. He just has to get back to who he used to be. So how likely is that? That's not a question I can answer. If we assume Bellinger is perfectly healthy now, it still doesn't resolve his problems. Muscle memory is a hard thing to change, and Bellinger has been like this for 2 years now. Is it too late? It's a real possibility. So that's kind of this guy's conclusion. He suggests that the Dodgers should sign Bellinger to an incentive-laden deal instead of go into arbitration, send him to an incentive-laden deal with a lower base salary so that he can kind of earn his money. I don't know if Bellinger would agree to that, and he would have to. So who knows if that's even possible. But I don't think it's as simple. From reading this, I don't think it's as simple as Bellinger just refuses to make adjustments. And that's what a lot of people say and what a lot of people think. I think Bellinger wants to hit well. I think if it was as simple as making adjustments, as simple as watching video of 2021 postseason and saying, do that again, I think he would have done it. And this makes a little more sense. I'm interested to see, if this gets back to the Dodgers, if it's something that they're already aware of. I mean, they have so many people on staff. You would think that they would have identified this. So maybe they have, and maybe it is just that muscle memory is hard to overcome. I do think, Bellinger having a healthy offseason to be able to try to implement some of this stuff, it could be the trick. He could come back and I don't think he's ever going to be his MVP self again, but he doesn't have to be. Like I said, even if 2020 had gone the full 162 games, I think he would have had a solid season because, it's just from the improvements he had made. 2018, his down year, he was very good. And so I think if they could get him back to 2018's version, that with his defense and everything, that's a very good place to be. And he could be very valuable to the team. Who knows if it's going to happen, but I do recommend you check out that article if you're interested in that sort of thing. Like I said, there's a lot of photos, some videos, and really digs into what he's saying about exactly what changed and when. So I'm going to come back in a minute. I'm going to talk about some comments that David Vassegh and Jerry Hairston made on Sportsnet LA on Tuesday evening about why the Dodgers lost to NLDS. I have some thoughts on their thoughts. So thank you again for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. And please keep it Locked On Dodgers. All right, I am back for one last segment. I want to thank you again for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. It does mean a lot to Vince and me. We love talking Dodgers with you, and we love that you are here so often with us. Love to hear your comments. If you're watching on YouTube, your comments in the YouTube thread would be great. If you're listening on podcast, we'd love to hear from you on social media. I'll give you all the contact info at the end of the episode. But our last segment, I want to talk a little bit about some comments that David Vassegh and Jerry Hairston Jr. made on Sportsnet LA on Tuesday evening. Basically, I'll just read you what Vassegh and Hairston said. Vassegh said, at Dodger Stadium in the month of September, you see the press box crowded with scouts from all the teams that you're going to see in the postseason. They know these players' tendencies inside and out because they're following them every single day. And the one thing that a lot of them noticed was that the Dodgers hitters don't make in-game adjustments. They're very married to the percentages that they see before the game. But here's the trick. The other teams know the Dodgers are married to that, and they flip the script on them, and the Dodgers have not had great fortune adjusting in game. We saw that during the 2019 NLDS when Steven Strasburg and Patrick Corbin pitched backwards against them. We saw that with Blake Snell in this series where all he had was his fastball. Yet for some reason, Dodger hitters are taking strike three with a fastball. That's the only pitch he had working for him, so they know their tendencies. And then Jerry Hairston said, I get text messages and calls a month before the start of the playoffs. They go, you guys aren't going to win the World Series, right? It's well known. You guys don't make in-game adjustments, especially offensively. We all know that. It's around baseball that we don't make offensive adjustments, and they flip the script on us. So that's the comments, and that's what I want to talk about. And it's funny how narratives change, because you remember during the season when the Dodgers were dominant, there were articles written about how one of the big differences, they're not as dependent on the iPads in the dugout. They're talking to each other more about what they're seeing. The implication there was they're making in-game adjustments based on, hey, Mookie, what'd you see in that about? Oh, he's throwing the slider more tonight. Okay, that was the implication all year long. And the fact is the Dodgers did win 111 games, and 48 of them were come from behind victories, which to me suggests some in-game adjustments. But now that they lost the NLDS, that narrative has changed. And, I guess for purposes of this conversation, we could ignore the fact that Patrick Corbin in 2019 went 0-2 with a 7.88 ERA in that division series. So I'm not sure why Vassegh mentioned Corbin there, because whatever he did, it was the opposite of working. But, there's no real reason to think they're being dishonest. They might have had these conversations with people. I have questions about the timing. Like, do you really think a potential playoff opponent really texted Jerry Hairston a month before the playoffs started to tell them how they were going to beat the Dodgers and why? Doesn't make much sense. But, so maybe the timing's a little off, but I doubt they're totally making this up. But more to the point, if it's so well known throughout the league that the Dodgers don't make in-game adjustments, and if those in-game adjustments are so important, how did the Dodgers win 111 games in the regular season? The playoffs, I know playoff baseball's different. No, not really. It's still baseball. There are things you have to do differently. Pitching is generally better. All those things. There's ways that it's different, but it's still the same game. So if the in-game adjustments are so important, why are they not important in the regular season? How did the Dodgers win 111 games if everybody knows they don't make in-game adjustments? The Padres, the same Padres who beat the Dodgers 3 out of 4 games in the NLDS, lost 14 out of 19 to the Dodgers in the regular season. Were the Padres playing possum in the regular season? Did they not learn this thing that everybody knows until sometime between September 29th and October 12th? Like, it just doesn't really pass the smell test to me. And most of all, I think there's a tendency on the part of analysts and people to identify the one big thing, one ring to rule them all, and then the darkness bind them. What is the one reason the Dodgers lost in the NLDS? And, well, don't make in-game adjustments. Yep, that's the answer. That's why they lost. I don't think there's hardly ever one reason. And if there is one reason, it's because they didn't hit with runners in scoring position. And, I guess you could say that was because they don't make adjustments. I don't know. I'd have to look at every one of those 20 at-bats where they went 0 for 20 and see, how many of those were striking out, looking at a fastball from Blake Snell. I don't know off the top of my head. But I suspect, some of them, we know one of them was a hard line drive by Mookie Betts that happened to go right at Manny Machado. Trey Turner had a hard hit right at Machado at some point. It was kind of a running joke by John Smoltz, or was it Smoltz? No. AJ Przinsky. Man, for a blessed moment, I had forgotten that AJ Przinsky exists. He kept joking, "Don't hit it to Manny Machado." And yeah, that would be good advice, probably. There were some strikeouts for sure in key moments in Game 7 or in Game 4 in the top of the 7th inning, and when the Dodgers got base loaded, no outs. They got the sacrifice fly from Will Smith. They got and then double steals, so it's second and third, 1 out. Max Muncy struck out against Tim Hill. Max Muncy in his career against Tim Hill in the regular season is like 2 for 7. In the postseason, he's 0 for 4 with 4 strikeouts. For whatever reason, Tim Hill has Max Muncy's number in the postseason. But that's across 2020 and 2022. It's probably small sample size fluke. Then Justin Turner grounded out, expanded the strike zone, grounded out. That I don't know if that was a lack of adjustments. I don't think that Muncy struck out because he didn't adjust. I think he struck out because Tim Hill has got that funky delivery that's hard to hit for a lefty sometimes. Strikeouts happen. I think that I don't know. They're trying too hard to find. And the crazy thing is, in that 0 for 20 with runners in scoring position, if the Dodgers had gone 4 for 20, which still isn't good, that's a 200 batting average. If they go 4 for 20 instead of 0 for 20, the Dodgers probably sweep this series. Obviously, depends on when the 20 came in, but they lost Game 2 by 1 run. They lost Game 2 by 2 runs. They lost Game 3 by 1 run. Get a couple more runs, you win the series. If they go 7 for 20 instead of 0 for 20, they win, they sweep the series, and none of the games are even close. Like, that's how significant that 0 for 20 was. And I think for you to chalk that up to, didn't make adjustments, there's our easy answer. I think it's easy and it's cheap. And most of the time, the easy answer is either not correct or at least not entirely correct. And I understand, believe me, I understand having to have things to talk about. But David Vassegh is not an analyst. Like, we call him an analyst, but he's a journalist. He's a reporter. He's an insider. He has access to players and coaches and stuff. That's what he is. That doesn't make him qualified. He doesn't. I don't really know. I don't dislike David Vassegh. I don't think his insights on baseball are that keen. I don't think he's that smart when it comes to baseball. I think he's a guy he likes baseball. He's a journalist. He has access to players. But Jerry Hairston, I'm much more inclined to at least listen to his analysis because he did play. That presents other weaknesses because a lot of times guys who played the game, especially a guy like Hairston, who third generation ball player. So I think he probably falls to the temptation to think he knows everything sometimes more than he does. But at least he played. And I'm not one who says, you can't know anything if you don't play, but you have to demonstrate that you do know something. And I don't think that Vassegh has demonstrated that analytical chops to say, okay, we should listen to anything he says from an analysis standpoint. Personally, I wouldn't have had him on that episode of Access Sportsnet because I don't think he has much to offer. I'd much rather listen to Hairston and Nomar and Oral, even though I would often disagree. Nomar hardly ever says anything I agree with, but at least it's from the standpoint, I understand where his biases are getting in the way of intelligent analysis or whatever sometimes. Anyway, so I think it's way too easy what they're trying to say, and I think it's a lot more complicated than that. I think there are a lot of reasons the Dodgers lost. There are a lot of reasons they went over for 20th runners in scoring position. Some of those reasons are bad luck. And even if 4 of those reasons were bad luck, if those 4 go differently, the Dodgers win the series. So one of the things I worry about is making big, broad generalizations and sweeping changes based on bad analysis. A quote that's often attributed to Mark Twain, people generally agree he didn't actually say it, was, "What makes a man a fool ain't what he don't know, but what he knows that ain't so," which means the lack of knowledge isn't the problem. It's when you think you know something, but what you know is actually incorrect, and you act on the incorrect knowledge, you're getting farther away from the truth instead of closer to it. And I think that analysis from Vassegh and Hairston was probably taking us farther away from the truth than getting us closer to it. Those are my thoughts. So that's going to do it for me for today. I want to thank you again for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. Again, for your second listen today, check out Locked On Sports Today. From the games that matter to the most to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today, available on this app, YouTube, and wherever you get podcasts. If you are not watching or listening to Locked On Dodgers every weekday morning, we would love if you add 1 or 2 days a month to your rotation. If you have friends or family who love the Dodgers as much as you do, please tell them about the show. You can follow us on Instagram and on Twitter at Locked On Dodgers. Vince is on Twitter at Vince Samperio. I am on Twitter at Snydog, and the DMs are open in all of those places. Our email address is lockedondodgers@gmail.com, and our phone number for voicemails or text messages is 323-863-LOCK, 5625. We are here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be here with us. When you get in your car or sit on your couch, tell your smart device to play podcast Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. We'll talk to you tomorrow.